Amy, I hope you can address the issue with the food. It's not very good. What do you mean it's not very good? Amy replied, I'd like you to make better bread. They sell better ovens for baking bread nowadays. Fine then. I'll inform the housekeeper, Emanuela, about this. Amy Anderson, 35, is a full-time FX trader working from home. She met her husband Eric, who is 2 years older than her, at a small mail order company where we both worked. Eric was in the pet food department, and I was in the cosmetics department, handling customer phone calls. Our company often flouted labor regulations, leading us to work overtime daily and return home late. Despite a high salary, we had little time to enjoy it. Our main solace was going out for drinks once a week with some coworkers. Those outings were our escape from the monotonous grind of excessive hours and unfulfilled dreams. I started dating Eric from that group, and we married 3 years ago. I left my job after marriage and stayed home for a while. Eventually, I decided to find a job I could do from home, which led me to FX trading. I immersed myself in books and online resources, studying extensively and practicing with demo accounts. Over time, I developed my own trading style and began earning a steady income. Although it took effort and persistence to reach this point, I eventually succeeded in FX trading. Meanwhile, my in-laws, Nicholas and Julia, moved in with us after Nicholas retired last year. They had been living in municipal housing, but Eric invited them to live with us, believing it would be difficult for them to manage on their pension alone. I cover all the living expenses, including rent, since I began earning from FX trading. Eric reassured his parents, saying, Amy will take care of the living expenses, so you can do whatever you like. Thank you, Amy, Nicholas and Julia said. That's very kind of you. Thus began our life together with Eric's parents. I don't handle household chores myself. Emanuela, our housekeeper, takes care of everything. Her excellent cooking and efficient management of household tasks have been invaluable, allowing me to focus on studying FX trading and writing about it. However, Nicholas and Julia haven't always been pleased. Initially polite and grateful, their attitude changed after a couple of months. They began questioning, what's the point of having a wife who stays at home but doesn't do any housework? She's always just sitting in front of the computer. Nicholas and Julia began to express their disapproval, though they never said it directly to me. Instead, they seemed to be constantly complaining to Eric, insinuating that my work in Forex trading was no better than gambling and that I wasn't contributing productively to the household. With the burden of rent and living expenses lifted, Eric started spending his salary more extravagantly. He embraced high fashion, opting for custom-made suits, designer bags, and luxury shoes. His newfound enthusiasm for fashion made him visibly happier, and he had no complaints about his financial situation. Eric shielded me from his parents' criticisms about my Forex trading, but lately his attitude shifted. Hey Amy, you're always just sitting in front of the computer. You don't wear makeup and only wear sweatshirts. Isn't that a bit plain and dreary? Eric said one day. Do I really need to put on makeup and dress up when I'm just staying at home? I replied. Well, that may be fine for you, but it's not good enough for me, he retorted. Wait a minute. Are you saying that just because I'm not dressing up, I'm not good enough for you? I asked, bewildered. Exactly, he said. Don't you ever want to make an effort to look nice for me? Are you saying I need to dress up for you to find me attractive? I was stunned. Since that conversation, Eric began to complain to Nicholas and Julia about me. One evening, after dinner, as I was heading to the bathroom, I overheard their murmurs. As I listened from the hallway, I overheard Nicholas and Julia's conversation in the living room. Amy, what's her problem? Nicholas grumbled. She always seems to look down on us. She does make us feel inferior, Julia agreed. She probably thinks we're poor just because we lived in municipal housing. Exactly, Nicholas said. Her refusal to do any of the housework seems like her way of showing she's different from us. She's just gambling to make money and acts so superior about it. Anyone can do FX trading, Julia added with disdain. Amy just studied a bit and now makes $80,000 a month. I could do it too. You're right, Nicholas replied. It's not that impressive. She's just bossy and arrogant about her so-called success. It's not even like she's working hard for it. I wonder who she thinks she is, Julia said. She's not even that attractive. Meanwhile, Eric and I used to have breakfast together every morning before he left for work, as it was a cherished part of our daily routine. Since Eric still works at the same company where we met, he comes home quite late. We both value that breakfast time, but lately Eric has been skipping it, saying, "Just eat breakfast on the way." Julia noticed Eric's new attitude and remarked, "Eric must be getting tired of you since you're not fulfilling your duties as a wife. That's what you get, Amy." Her tone was dripping with sarcasm. "What do you mean by duties as a wife, Julia?" I asked. "If you're referring to household chores, Emanuela handles them perfectly. The notion of duties is outdated." "Outdated," Julia retorted. "We value traditional customs in our family. Your grandmother-in-law used to enforce discipline quite strictly." "Discipline? Isn't it enough that the household chores are being done? I'm paying Emanuela well for her work," I replied. "Do you think this is just about money?" Julia snapped. "Just because you cover all our living expenses doesn't mean you can be bossy and arrogant." Julia seemed to be spending a lot of time socializing with people in our apartment building now that she didn't have to worry about her living expenses. I often saw her carrying expensive designer bags. Nicholas, too, was using his pension on his golf hobby with new golf clubs and a golf bag always at the door. I was responsible for covering their rent and living expenses, and I couldn't understand their behavior or attitude toward me. Despite my frustrations, I tolerated their presence since they had nowhere else to go. About a month after Eric stopped having breakfast with me, his business trips increased. He mentioned that he was leading the launch of a new department at his company, which involved importing LEDs from Korea. His trips to Korea became more frequent. That weekend, while Eric was away on another business trip to Korea, I decided to have dinner with Lily, a school friend, at a fancy Italian restaurant. I had been to this restaurant with Eric before, so I was surprised when, during the lunch outing with Lily, I saw Eric, who was supposedly on a business trip to Korea. Lily and I were enjoying a glass of wine on the terrace when she pointed inside and said, "Hey Amy, isn't that your husband Eric?" I turned around and saw Eric leaving the restaurant with a woman. At first, I hoped it was a mistake. After all, Eric was supposed to be in Korea. Lily tried to comfort me, but it was unmistakably Eric. Every time Eric claimed he was on a business trip to Korea, it meant he was spending the weekend with another woman. The woman with him was petite, cute, and appeared to be in her early 20s, much younger than Eric, who was 37. I remember Eric once asking me if I wanted him to be attracted to me. Seeing him with someone else confirmed my worst fears. He was definitely cheating. The next day, Monday, I immediately hired a private investigator to look into the affair. At home, I had also been receiving an increasing number of packages addressed to Julia. "Julia, did you buy something again?" I asked one day. "Be quiet, Amy," Julia snapped. "Do I need your permission to buy anything?" "No, that's not what I meant," I replied, concerned. Julia seemed to be obsessed with online shopping, buying high-end brand bags and jewelry. I worried about her getting scammed, as many fake designer items are sold online. That day, while Eric was at work, Julia entered the room. While I was working, Julia called out, "Hey Amy, I need you to look at something." "What is it?" I asked, setting aside my work. "Just come here," she replied. Reluctantly, I followed her to the living room, where she was opening a recently delivered package. Inside, she had purchased 5 bags in a bundle deal, claiming they were cheap. "I think these bags might be fake," Julia said as she opened the package. "Julia, you should be very cautious when buying items online," I advised. "There's a high risk of getting counterfeit products, especially with high-end brands." I was curious about how much Julia had spent on these bags, given their apparent low quality. "What should I do with these 5 bags?" she asked. "First, I recommend contacting the seller to see if they have a return policy," I suggested. Julia attempted to reach out to the seller, but she encountered difficulties. She couldn't find a phone number or any contact information at first. When she eventually found a number and called it, she was told it was no longer in use. Julia had spent a total of $5,000 on these fake bags. The mail order site looked legitimate at first glance, but the bags were listed at an unusually low price. Julia had paid via bank transfer, which meant she couldn't stop the transaction through a credit card dispute. The site's return policy clearly stated there was no cooling off period, making her ineligible for a refund. "Julia, you really need to be more careful with these purchases," I warned her. "When buying high-end goods online, if the price seems unusually low, it's likely to be a fake," I explained. "You really need to think it through before making a purchase and not just jump on it because it's cheap." Julia retorted, Don't act like I don't know what I'm doing, Amy. It's not about that. It's just a waste of money to spend $5,000 on counterfeit goods, I said. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Julia snapped. Since arguing wasn't helping, I returned to my room to focus on work. That Sunday after dinner, Nicholas suddenly confronted me. Stop doing FX trading, he demanded. I was golfing with a friend from my old job, and he told me Forex trading is a scam. You scamming people. What are you talking about? I asked, surprised. He said Forex trading is a scam. They promise you easy money but are just trying to take your money. Nicholas continued. Is that what you're doing, Amy? No, I'm not scamming anyone or luring people into investments, I clarified. I use social media to share information about Forex trading through my blog. I'm just trying to help people who are interested. You think you can fool me just because I'm not tech savvy? Nicholas accused. I'm not fooling anyone, I replied. Dad thinks it's a scam because making money seems too easy to him. It's not easy money, Eric, I added. I've explained this to you several times. It's not as easy as it looks, I said. You think I just studied a bit and started making a lot of money, but it's not that simple. Eric responded. Meanwhile, I'm working my butt off to start a new department at the company. It must be easy for you. Eric, I thought you were supposed to support me in FX trading. If I stop, what happens to the payments? We won't be able to afford the rent. I can handle the rent myself, Eric said. I felt frustrated. As the full-time FX trader, my income was what allowed Eric and his family to enjoy their current lifestyle. Yet they seemed ungrateful and only complained about my work. The next day, I received the results from the investigator I hired. It was confirmed. Eric was cheating on me. He was having an affair with a 25-year-old woman, 12 years younger than him. I had never met her. She had joined the company after I left. Apparently, she had accompanied Eric on several business trips to Korea. I spent a few days contemplating how to confront Eric with this information, knowing it would likely lead to divorce. That evening, Emanuela cooked dinner for us. As she was leaving, Julia approached me. Amy, I had a conversation with Nicholas and Eric. Julia said, we've decided we don't like anything about you. We want to live on our own, and we want you to leave. Eric hadn't returned from work yet. We don't want to be supported by your so-called scam money. Julia continued. We don't like how you act like you know everything. We discussed this with Eric, and we've decided you need to move out. I felt a sense of resignation. The fact that Eric wasn't even here showed he had no feelings left for me. There was no reason for me to continue supporting these people. Fine then, I said, realizing that this was probably for the best. That day, I packed my bags and moved into a hotel. The divorce was finalized soon after. Since I had discovered Eric's infidelity during our marriage, I was able to file for alimony. I quickly rented a one-bedroom apartment that suited me perfectly and moved in. I also changed the lease from Eric's name to mine. About 4 months later, I received a call from Eric. He said he wanted to talk and would come to my new apartment. As I waited, Nicholas and Julia arrived with him, and I had a sinking feeling about what was coming. Amy, we're really sorry, Eric said, looking remorseful. We apologize for our terrible behavior. Please come back and live with us. Nicholas and Julia echoed his apologies, their faces filled with regret. What is this all about? I asked, confused. Eric, still looking down, explained, we can't afford the $40,000 rent and we're about to be evicted. We have no place to go and are in serious trouble. Please help us. I was stunned. Eric continued, revealing that his new department, which focused on importing LEDs from Korea, had been a disaster. The LEDs were defective, and when customers complained, the factory had to recall the products. Eric's poor Korean and misunderstanding of the contract led to a failed business venture. Eric was fired, and his attempt to become a full-time Forex trader using his small savings had also failed. Nicholas and Julia had some savings, but Nicholas lost money trying to invest in stocks at the wrong time. Now, they were all struggling to pay rent and even move out. Eric pleaded, we're already divorced, but I need your help. My girlfriend, the one 12 years younger, disappeared when I lost my job. I have no one else. Please, let's get remarried and start over. Julia added, we realize we were wrong. I'm truly sorry for calling you a scammer and for everything else. Please give us another chance. No way, Eric, I replied firmly. Don't say that. I'm sorry. I'll never cheat again, Eric insisted. Yes, we'll be a family again, Julia chimed in. I will not do that, I said resolutely. If you don't leave, I will call the police. Despite their pleas, I stood my ground. When they finally left, I felt a mix of disbelief and relief. Eric called me twice after that, asking for reconciliation, but I refused each time. I had no interest in knowing or caring about their lives anymore. After spending so much time alone, focusing on my work as a trader, I felt ready to start dating again. I mentioned this to my friend Lily, and she offered to introduce me to someone. I'm looking forward to meeting her friend tomorrow and excited about this new beginning.